Hello guys and welcome back. So in this video, if you haven't watched the previous video is about how we solve the nasty bug error about index out of range and also null reference exception. If you take a look at it, because that was where we did the intro to this video. I'll be linking it in the video description. So we talked about the mechanics of how the incrementing would work. So let's just try to code the coding. So now what we need to do first is anytime the player collides with the enemy, we need to increment the number of enemies that have been killed. So at start, the number of enemies killed is 0. Once the player collides with an enemy, it increases to 1 to 2 and that. So if you have a new script for that, but mainly I want to check my enemies. I want to check where they have a player script. This one says movement controller. So to open your C# project, you can either go to asset, open C# project, or you can use it on a C# script. So I'm trying to get where we actually destroying the enemies. Okay, great. Now this is attached to the player. It says here on trigger enter, if the tag of the game object that the player is colliding is tag enemy, then it should set the enemy as active. This is more like destroying the enemy, because we actually use this cause of the object pulling methodology that we are using, and just to make our game application more optimized. So now this is the best place to call the increment. This is the best place to call the increment number of enemy kills. Now we have to write this in a function. We could have a function here. We could have it in a game manager script, but just to make things much more easier for us. Now, of course, we should have it easier way. Let's create a function called a private function called increment number of enemy kills. Increment number of enemy kills. So now within a variable, and of course you don't have to put an header, so just make your code small it. So let's call it game variables. So let's have a private. We'd actually display on the UI, so we're going to make it public. Private integer called number of enemy killed. So at start, you want to make sure that you are instantiating this value to 0, because you want the player starts the game, of course they haven't killed any enemy. You want to instantiate that to 0. Now on every time this function increments number of enemies is called, we want to increase that by 1. So there are two ways we could actually do number of enemy killed equals number of enemy killed minus 1, which means they're getting the initial value then adding 1. But a better way is just to use the increment operator. So how do you use the increment operator? Just two plus signs. So this we have post increment and then pre-increment, we have post decrement and then pre-decrement. So when you add the plus sign before the variable, then you have the pre, and then when you have it after, then you have the post. So actually what we want to do now is make sure the value is left as it is initially, then increment it. For in our case now, the value is at 0, then we increment later to 1 once the enemy has been killed. So mainly that's what the function does, increment the number of enemies killed. So now we want to call the function here, right here. So let's call the function increment enemy killed. So which means every time the player kills an enemy, it will increment number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. Okay, now we need to display this value to the player. We need to make sure the player is able to see the number of enemy he or she has killed. So first, let's create the UI for it. Let's create the user interface for it. Going back to Unity Editor, I should let my script load. So now what we will be doing is let's use Text Mesh Pro. You can either use Text Mesh Pro or Text, either one. But just if you need to use Text Mesh Pro, you have to import the package. I think I already imported that in my last video. And I already have a canvas system. You need just a canvas. You need just a an event system for your should I say every scene in your project. You need to have, usually want to work, you have two event systems, so you need just one event system, and you can always create every single one of the UI elements under just the canvas, except you want some workspace and a little bit of specialized canvas system here, but for now we're working with the canvas and the text system. So now we need a UI text. So by right clicking on my canvas, go to UI and then choose text or text mesh pro. I'll be going for text mesh pro, and I will name this number of so enemy number, enemy killed number, and then I like to have a way of knowing this is actually a text, so I add a little bit of underscore and add the word text, so I will know this is actually a text, game of text. Now we need to position this. The best way to do is to switch your scene view to 2D. You can use that with this toggle button. So once you have this orthographic view, you are in 2D mode. So now click on the canvas, click on F to focus, click on the enemy number. Now you can anchor it with this in the inspector by clicking on, by just single clicking, left click. You can choose whether to anchor it to your, mainly the main reason why you need an anchor is so that when the screen is resized, it will maintain the position that you have anchored it to. For example, now naturally you would want to anchor this to your topmost right. So by clicking Alt and then clicking this, you should notice that it's moving. So by clicking Alt and clicking this, you can see it's moved it straight. Let me show you that again. It's currently at the center. Clicking Alt, clicking this, it's anchored to topmost right. Now if you notice the game view, no matter how you resize your game view, you will have it at the topmost right corner. Now if you also learn to do this, click on your canvas, scroll down and come here, constant visual size, change it to scale with screen size, and also the match, change it to 0.5. So mainly what this does is to make sure that your UI and your UI elements are displaying in the right proportions on every single screen, no matter how big or how small. You can use the simulator to check this, but that's actually for more kind of advanced project and stuff. Or you can actually use that for this project, but now you use in our case. So moving on, now we have created an enemy killed number text. You can edit the text from here. You can change the color, you can change the size. By clicking on here, let me focus. Clicking on, I can even drag this. Notice it's moving in the game view. So now what I want this to display is numbers. So whatever you input is actually doesn't make. Well, let me just use some placeholder. Let's say 100. So I can just resize it. Okay, now you notice it's overflowing. So scroll down, come to wrapping, schedule. So now no matter how you squeeze this, it won't overflow. It won't wrap. Okay, great. Now I have this value here. Great. Now moving on, if I go back to my script, we actually need to set the I said we will have to display it using a UI text, but initially you need an access to a UI text. So by moving to your UI manager script, and sorry, this was actually created from the last project, so let me just show you how we do that. Mainly you are right clicking on your script folder and you're creating another script named UI manager. So once you have that, let me do this. You have a blank script like this. So now we need a variable called and this is what so we need access to the UI interface, the UI elements. You can do that by just accessing the using UI. That's if you're using the normal default user interface, but we are able to access the UI. But for the text mesh pro, remember we created the text from the text mesh pro. We need to access the TM pro. So great. Now come back to your the class, create an header, just to categorize stuff. So you pick up. I will name these variables. And name it whatever you want. So now we need a public text mesh pro GUI. So this we name it enemy killed text. Now the great thing about this is once we have created this, you can create a function called update UI. You can also call this, let's just write the script in update for now. Remember, the update is called every single frame. So and you need the number of enemies to keep updating every single frame. So now let's come to the update function. Enemy killed text is a text mesh pro UI element. Now you can access the text from it and then set the value to whatever you want. Now remember, the value you want is what? Enemy killed. Now the best way to access the enemy killed, let me come and do that first, is to come back here. We need what value? We need this value, number of enemy killed. Now if you need to access a variable from other scripts, you can, there are several ways of doing it, but the best and at least more easier approach is to just change this to public. Yeah, that's just the most easier approach. Now changing this to public means you can access this value, this variable, from other scripts when they are able to access this particular movement controller script. So to make things easy, let me give you a visual representation of that. Say for example, now you have a script A, and a script B. Now script A has a variable called enemy killed, and using this particular variable inside script B, the best way to do that would be to attach script A to script B. I mean, the more easier approach would be to attach script A to script B, make this variable public, and then accessing this variable from the A instance that you have attached to B. I hope that's clear. So you need to access the variable from A inside script B. The best way to do this will be to create an instance. You need to create a reference of script A in script B, and then access that public. It has to be public, and then access that public variable from script B, and that's what we're going to do now. So mainly we need to access the enemy killed here. Now the best way to do that would be I keep saying the word best. I don't know, is that the best? That's just like the simpler approach. So I will name these references. Now we'll be creating, since I need to attach this in the editor, a public instantiate manager script. I'll call that instantiate manager script. Now great. Now from this script I can easily just say, from this script give me dot any public variable here. So now I have to make sure that the public variable I made from movement controller, okay, is enemy killed. Great, is public. Now I can come here and say dot enemy killed. Number of enemy. And is that right? Is this enemy killed or number of enemy? It's number of enemy killed. So we actually need to access this particular variable. Let's check that again. It's number of enemy killed. Okay, I don't know why I keep referencing number of enemies. Let's check once again. Okay, it's only accessing actually the variable we need is a movement controller, so we would actually need not instantiate manager but movement controller. We call it the movement controller script, and then you can access the number of enemies to great. Now remember, it's an integer. We need to change that using, we need to make that a string, since you can only attach string to text. So just use the string and voila, everything is done. So now what we have to do now is attach any game object that has the movement controller script to this UI manager, and also to attach enemy killed text from the unit editor. So now we'll go back to unit editor. Now wait for that to load. Now moving to UI manager. It's attached here. It needs a game object that has a movement controller attached, which is the player, and then it needs this particular text, which is this. So attach this and it will be ready. So you guys click on play. Great. Now you can see anytime I kill an enemy, the number increments. So it works